Hello and welcome to another Fountain Insight video. My name is Chris Reeve. I'm the social media manager here at Fountain. I'm delighted today to be joined by John Argent, CEO at Six, brand and tech agency based in Bristol. And today I'm really excited because John's going to be talking us through the rapid rise of brand culture, which I think is super exciting. So John, if we could kick off with a very simple question, what exactly do you define as brand culture, and why should we care? Why do businesses need to be tuning into this?
Oh, thanks, Chris. Well, to be honest, I suppose it's really just a very convenient and neat way of both acknowledging and describing the close relationship between sort of brand and culture. The point being that you can't really usefully treat them in isolation. Because I think until recently, they were treated differently. Brand was owned by marketing and culture by HR. And I like to think of them almost as identical twins that were separated at birth, but now have been sort of successfully reunited by the understanding that they are really just two sides of the same coin that reflect what any business is truly like, both inside and out.
It's so true, and I totally agree with that. And I personally feel as though, well, my observations are saying that this is a pivotal moment in that shift, that movement. I feel like they are becoming closer than ever before. But of course, there's case studies where people haven't sped up that process, or they have, which we'll get into in a short moment. But cracking start, and thanks for sharing that answer, John. So, what exactly could go wrong with your business or brand if you don't tune into brand culture?
Well, I suppose it kind of mattered less in the past because businesses could sort of run a very, very different internal culture and portray themselves with sort of very glossy or sort of appealing sort of brands on the outside. But as we all know, in this sort of age of greater transparency, and it's not just social media, but the fact that the consumer holds far more power, it's a lot harder to hide your true personality and style, and those disconnects are often sort of very sort of cruelly laid bare, really, and then trust is broken between sort of consumers and customers, and people will take their custom elsewhere.
I think that's true, John, and I think, again, from my observations, I feel like people used to make so much of their buying decisions based on probably 80 or even 9% price, right? It was just the cheapest, I'm going to get it, the most cost effective. Whereas I feel like now, and potentially it's a generational thing, I don't know, it'd be interesting to get your take on this. People are wanting to make their purchasing decisions based on so much more, which of course encompasses brand culture. Would you agree with that?
I totally, and in fact, I was going to make the point that I think that however competitive the workplace is right now, this latest generation that are entering the workforce are far more discerning, and they simply won't work for or consume sort of the brands of businesses whose sort of values they don't think are really sort of clear, sort of consistent, and appropriately compelling, I suppose, and that's reflected in their culture. And that comes through in their brand, their products and their services, and that is their brand, effectively.
I agree, John. I think there's almost like an advanced point on this, right? Which is that we're talking about the very basics today, which some businesses and organizations aren't doing, which is, of course, a crying shame and more full to them. But I think actually we're now at the point where actually we need to be looking to the advanced stage, which is you need to be making a notable difference to the world, whether that be within the world of the environment or looking after your workforce, making something notable. Because I think now, John, the consumer, whether it be B2B or B2C or whichever business that you're in, I feel like they can see through the marketing nonsense. Would you agree with that?
They can, and in sort of preparation almost for sort of catching up and having this chat with you, I was thinking about the fact that sort of with COVID, which I know you're going to ask about, that sort of, I think, accelerated how a lot of people have behaved. And I was thinking about all those people who in the early days of lockdown behaved really well or really badly. And I was thinking, do you know what, we've all got long memories when it comes to this kind of thing, and we won't sort of think kindly of those businesses that didn't treat their staff or their customers well. But I sort of reminded myself of a few of those examples, and I thought, well, actually, maybe people have got short memories because, Weatherspoons were sort of famously they caused a lot of outrage because they said they wouldn't pay their staff until their furlough money had sort of come through, and then I'm sure sort of the kids are all down in the spoons again, drinking heavily. And Sports Direct was very heavily criticised for refusing to close its shops because it still wanted to sell, and it said it was an essential service despite putting its staff at risk. And again, I'd hesitate to think just how many people have just retreated back to shopping where they want to. But I'm sure the dial has moved a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think it has, and I would agree with that. I was going to ask you about COVID, John, and the impact, but I think you've answered it perfectly well there. I think it sped it up, but it's only moved the dial a little bit. I think there's still a lot of work to be done for sure. So we've talked about the things that could go wrong and have gone bad for certain organizations and the ones that haven't tuned into it. But can you give an example of a brand that perhaps has done very well and really doubled down on brand culture in this last 6, 12, 18 months, John?
Well, I suppose, again, they probably sort of fall into two camps, really. I think there are those brands and businesses which we already associate with being the good guys, and I think their behaviour has just pleasantly sort of reassured us that they've carried on in the same way. And I think in terms of people like Unilever, they announced putting 90 million sort of towards fighting sort of the pandemic, and I think most people know that that's a very responsible sort of business, and most of its brands are quite ethically sort of managed, and their intent is very, very clear. The same could probably be said of Timpson's, the retailer that does all the key cutting and shoe repairs. They were very, very committed to make sure that none of their staff would struggle during the lockdown. And then there will be those that sort of did behave responsibly and did good things. I mean, BP sort of famously said, anyone in the emergency services could sort of drop in on their service stations and get free drinks and the like. Lloyds Bank, I know, suspended a whole load of planned job cuts and sort of granted a lot of sort of mortgage holidays for people. So I think, going back to my point earlier about moving the dial a little bit, a lot of companies have tapped into the zeitgeist generally of everything COVID's done for us, where everyone is looking at their own values and their career progression and their ambitions, and they're tuning into it. So yeah, there are good signs.
What can small businesses do? Because obviously the businesses that you mentioned there are actually pretty colossal, right? Unilever, Lloyds, big brands. What can small businesses do in terms of brand culture to make an impact?
Well, I imagine if they're not already driven to sort of having quite a clear sort of moral compass or a North Star, for want of another trendy term, they probably do want and need just to make sure that they're quite clear about what they stand for, because it comes down to staff retention and attraction. Because the weird world we're in right now is that some businesses have been completely turned upside down, don't know which way to turn, but many have needed to sort of quickly come to terms with the new world and are growing furiously in trying to recruit people. And you'll only get good people if, in fact, everything about how you conduct yourself and behave, which is reflected in your culture and your brand, will come true. So it's everything from what you go out and you say, what your job ads look like, how you conduct yourself in job interviews, that classic sort of full cycle of the employee experience. So you think about yourself or people you know and how they describe where they work when they're sort of having a drink in the pub. You can't hide the good or the bad sort of ultimate emotion you have for your business that you work for.
No, I don't think you can, John. And I might have to get you. I'm going to have to get you on again, because you're just taking my questions. Like you're just nailing it. And I really wanted to talk to you about something that you've made a real big point of in your white paper. And I'm encouraging anyone that's watching this now to go and download it for more detail, because the guys at Six have absolutely smashed it on this white paper. And one of the things that you've mentioned and made a big point of is internal culture and external brand should be equal. But what do you exactly mean by that, John?
Well, I suppose it goes back to that point about them being two sides of the same coin, and sort of one can't be strong or successful without the other. But on reflection, I would go further actually and suggest that the best approach is what we call an inside-out approach that we take our clients through, whereby you need to actually get your own house in order first. So you need to be clear about your own sort of purpose and values, etc., setting that as a North Star for the business and all who work in it for it. And then you can build out sort of products and services that will sort of stand up to scrutiny for your customers.
I couldn't agree more with that. And there's that term that's coined by some. It's the old cobbler's shoe, isn't it? And I think that might be a lazy excuse, if I'm being honest, John. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I suppose it would be. I mean, look at us. We're a 75 strong business, so I think we've sort of rather sort of quietly migrated from being a big little business to a little big one, and all that sort of goes with that culturally. And we do have to make sure that we actually conduct ourselves in the same way. And businesses go through different cycles of growth, and you have founders who perhaps do what they love and just want to be busy doing that, and then you suddenly realize you've built a business and you're responsible for a lot of people, and you need to have all this ecosystem around it. And that comes back to your work practices and how you look after your people, how you develop them, et cetera, et cetera. And then you need to recruit people who are better qualified than yourself to do that. That's certainly the case for me.
John, thanks so much for coming on and having this conversation with me today. I know that you're a very busy man, so thank you so much for your time.
No, it's my pleasure, and it's been very enjoyable. Thank you, Chris.
And thank you so much to everyone that's watched. We really appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this video and you're watching it on, well, whichever social platform, do give it a like and share if you found it valuable with your contacts and connections. Really looking forward to hearing feedback. As always, if anyone has any questions on all things digital marketing, please just drop us an email anytime. We're contact@fountainpartnership.co.uk.